I'm excited to be sharing again this morning a message from and having the privilege to share God's Word with you. And I pray that you will be rooted and established in love. That you would have the power, together with the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and long and deep is the love of Christ, and to know His love that surpasses knowledge, that you would be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. I pray that this morning you will be so greatly encouraged to live righteously and victoriously in the power and grace of God in this present world. You are here today. You are intended for life today. God placed you in this time and place, not by accident. You are here for today, and I pray that each of us would be encouraged this morning to carefully and soberly consider the effect and weight of our words so that we will use them to build rather than to destroy. I thought that perhaps for the sermon today I should have brought a hammer, and we all know that a hammer is a useful tool. It is used to build. This structure right here, that our church building, there were hammers used to build it. But that same hammer can be used to devastate, to destroy, and it can be used for destruction, just like our words. And this morning, I trust that we will be encouraged to use our words, to consider the effect of our words, so that we would use them to build rather than to destroy. And I'm excited to share with you some encouragement this morning by the Spirit of God from His Word. The power of words is what I've entitled this sermon from James chapter 3, the first 12 verses. It continues in the series that I've entitled FaithWorks. The overview of James, half-brother of Jesus, in this book is encouraging followers to live righteously and faithfully. From James chapter 1, how to persevere through temptation, how to care for vulnerable people. If he says, if you want to be a faithful follower, you need to care for the vulnerable, for widows, for orphans. He encourages us to keep ourselves pure. That's from James 1 and James 2, loving all people equally. The sin of partiality, he reminds us that not one of us is better than someone else, and encourages us to keep ourselves pure. At the end of the chapter, that faith and works go together, that we cannot call ourselves a people of faith and not have works. And now James 3, the first 12 verses, the effect and power of the tongue. You know the saying, I've said it before, right from this place, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. No idea who came up with that. Every one of us knows it's not true. Even if we're tempted to say it, we know it's not true. No one stays in a hospital with a broken bone forever. But the couches of counselors in our nation are dented from those who sit week after week searching for healing from hurtful words, harmful words. Some things that you hate about yourself most likely have included things that others have said to you. Perhaps you were young, perhaps you were a child, and you were not able to process the words that were said. I can think of some of those words that were said, perhaps even with good intent, but they cut deep. Perhaps they were words carelessly said. Perhaps the person doesn't even know that they said them. I was talking this morning just before Sunday school with some people, and wasn't really going to share this, but I found it so funny. And there was a time probably in my life where this would have hurt a little more. I was a week ago or so. Laura bought me my Christmas gift for last year, which was a suit. My suits were rather ill-fitting for some reason, and I've had them a long time. And the salesman at this where we were just talked non-stop. Finally, I said, look, if you just give us time, we'd like, because, he had a jacket on me of a suit that I didn't pick because he thought it's probably the one that I would want if I'm a one-suit kind of man. Then charcoal's evidently the color. And he said, and those come with size 42 pants, so I'll get them for you right now. I've never worn those, but I'm sure they can be taken in a little bit. I'm closer to there than I care to be. But then eventually I did pick the suit and got it, ended up buying from him. And then when we were checking out, he says, we have a lot of short, fat men come through here, and they're hard to get a suit for. And I didn't know for sure if he was talking about me or not, because he was talking nonstop. It didn't bother me at all. It just gives great sermon material. You see, he doesn't have a clue that he said that to me that day, probably. There was probably a time in my life where that would have just stung a little more, where I would have been a little more convinced that he was probably talking about me. You see, the words that are spoken, words have the power to damage the deepest part of our being. You've maybe heard this: I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you. That's another lie. That's not how it works, because words don't just stick to us, words penetrate. I remember a young man that I look up to. And he lives well. But it was in a moment in a hockey game where he turned to me on the ice and said something hurtful to me. Now, we all know what happens on the ice stays on the ice, right? Wrong. I don't even know why he said it. I was a little confused. That was part of it. I don't know where it came from, except that it came out of him. It came out of him, and it was directed at me. So what bothered me about it was, I wonder if that is how he feels about me. I never went back to him to ask. I decided that it's up to me to make sure that I'm not that kind of character. Whether he feels that way about me or not is going to go home with him. It's up to me to make sure that I'm not that kind of guy. You see, words don't just stick to us. They bury themselves deep in our hearts. Commentator Derek Kidner wrote this: what is done to you is of little account beside what is done in you. Because when something goes into my heart, it has an incredibly long process or effect generally. And the things that are spoken to us generally shape our lives. So this morning, we're going to look into God's Word, James chapter 3, verses 1 through 12. I'd like to read those verses now. Excuse me. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that those who teach will be judged with greater strictness. For we all stumble in many ways. And if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is perfect. He is a perfect man, able to bridle his whole body. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, straining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed, and has been tamed by mankind, but no human can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our God and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not to be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water. That is the word of God, English Standard Version. Our tongue, our words are so powerful, they are dangerous, and the tongue is untamable. Those are the 3 points that I've taken from this passage. The weight of our words that we say to each other are powerful. They have the ability to give life, to encourage, to give someone a reason to lift their chin and just step out. Our words have the ability to give someone the courage to face what lies ahead. Our words have the ability to heal a broken heart, but they are dangerous. It is dangerous because they have the equal potential to devastate and to destroy and to discourage and to ruin. And so it is dangerous. And as he says, James says, it is untamable. Our tongue is untamable. Very difficult to control. We all know that, do we not? We've all uttered that and said, I can't believe I just said that. Or perhaps said something about someone. Why did I say that? What help is there in speaking negatively about another person? It's very difficult to control. And in verse 2, you saw it there. It says that if anyone can tame their tongue or control their tongue, they're perfect. So I'm just going to go through these verses verse by verse and make a few points for us to encourage us to consider our words. Verse 1, not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that those who teach will be judged with greater strictness. I don't have to tell you that I don't like this verse. You can assume that. I'm a teacher. But this is truth. Leaders are held to higher account. Jesus said it like this, to whom much is given, much will be required. The words of Jesus. That might be wealth. If you have been given much wealth, you will be required not just to give much, but what you are doing with it. It might be responsibility. To whom much is given, much is required. If you've been given great responsibility, I mean, Jesus talked about that time and again, did he not? About the talents and how a person is using their talents, about money and how they're using their money. To whom much is given, much will be required, Jesus said. It may be talking about, and it would seem here with this verse, verse 1, not many should teach, for we know they will be judged with a greater strictness. It may be talking about position or influence. A teacher is influential. Every one of us has had a teacher that you would say, wow, they spoke life. One of the reasons that I'm a teacher is, and perhaps even a teacher in 7th and 8th grade, is because of the profound effect of my 7th and 8th grade teacher. He spoke life into me. Most likely, God used him to change the course of my life. Now, my mom and dad get tremendous credit for their faithfulness, but he was a good teacher. He was authentic. He is an authentic man, and not only cared about teaching the subject, but he cared about me, and I think Dave would attest to that as well. He knows exactly the time period in which Tim Kipfer entered our lives. You see, it's a little scary because when I consider the weight of words, how damaging they can be, but also how life-giving they can be. Perhaps you've also had a teacher that you said, yeah, I was glad to be out of their classroom. They gave no life. Verse 2. And so, for all of us, let us consider our words. But if you are instructing another person, we must be careful that our words are accurate and that they are right and that they are true and that they are grace-filled. Because when we are telling another person either how to live or teaching them in whatever thing, our words are instructing them, and they are, of course, powerful. Verse 2 says this, we stumble in many ways. Now here, James, it's almost like a confession, isn't it? I've said things like this. None of us is perfect. We all struggle. We all have our struggles. We all stumble. That's what James is saying. He says we all stumble in many ways. But if a person doesn't stumble in what they say, he is perfect. He's saying, this matters. He's saying, it matters. Comparatively, and then he goes on to say, comparatively to the rest of the muscles in our body, our tongue is so tiny. We put the bit in a horse's mouth, and that tiny bit can turn this massive beast whichever way the driver wishes for it to go. With this tiny little bit. And then he says, and the rudder on a ship, comparatively to the size of the ship. The rudder turns this vessel in the wind, in the waves, according to, verse 4, the will that the pilot directs. It's so small. And then he says, and so is your tongue. It is tiny, but the effects of our words are massive. They can do such great things. Words spoken in conflict. Words spoken in anger, in haste. Words devastate. They discourage. And sometimes in at least church life, people are probably well-intended as they exhort. But I've said this so many times, churches, and I think maybe this is a critical statement, but in conservative churches, I feel that many people, there are too many exhorters. Exhortation is a gift that some people have. Exhortation is necessary. It is necessary that we are sometimes exhorted. But how much more powerful is an encouraging word? How much more powerful is a word that gives encouragement? And it just makes me think of a verse. I don't remember where it is now, where it says, continue to encourage one another and build each other up just like you are already doing. That's what it says. That's what our words should be doing. Instead of pointing out all the shortcomings, and this is something I remind myself of many times, that just because a person disagrees with me doesn't make them wrong. In most things, just because a person disagrees with me doesn't make them wrong. I have a note in my Bible that was given to me at one time, and I know I've referred to this before, but this is life-giving, and every one of us here has the ability to give someone a note. And I realize that I'm a little more sentimental than most. If you have given me a note, I've not thrown it out. unless it was exhortation. I might learn from it, but there are things that I don't want to remember. There are shortcomings I don't want to remember. I want to learn from them and then move on. But if you've given me a card that said something encouraging, I have kept it. It's nothing about me. That's the kind of guy I am. I don't know if I'll ever go back through them. I could see myself sometime when life slows down and I've nothing else to do, that I might sit down, or if I'm discouraged, I might use, because that's what I find there. When someone says to me, you are appreciated, I expect them to mean it. And those are simple words. This note in my Bible came from a good friend of mine who said, first, I like going to the same church as you. Unfortunately, he doesn't anymore, but he is walking worthy of the calling that God has placed on his life. I always look forward to your Sunday school, to your messages, and I'm not saying this blowing into my own sail. I'm just saying this was life-giving. And every one of us has the ability to do this. Second, you've been a listening ear. And he goes on to say these nice things. When I see you interact with your children, this was before he had any, I hope to be a dad like you. I'm not boasting. That is life. It is life for you. When someone says, look, I saw that, that's life. It's just words. He probably has no idea that the effect of that I've told him, but I don't know that he ever imagined the effect of writing that down and giving it to me. You see, a long time ago, I was going through a tough spell as a teacher, and there was a guy that was quite critical of me. And I don't really remember much of what he said to me. I've let it go. And as I was preparing this message, I kept thinking back, now, who has spoken life? And in fact, it was so difficult, and I was really working hard to keep my job, and he was on the board. When his last child graduated, we were at graduation, and he came to me and thanked me for my years of giving. And he said, Calvin, Countryside needs you. You are appreciated. I don't remember the things from before. I know it was hard. I don't actually remember. That was a sort of middle-aged man apology, I think. He didn't acknowledge anything. That gave life. Because I knew where that came from. To actually, and he said more things of encouraging. They're just words. But those words came from somewhere. And those words were life. You see, our words are powerful. And so just like the tongue is a small member, it has the potential to ruin. And if I would really dredge the pond, I've no desire to do so, I could probably think of things that were said in my past that were really hurtful. And here's the thing, guys. Once you have let it go, once you have dealt with the hurts, and you've processed them, the more we bring them up, the more difficult it is to find healing. And I remember learning that. I remember, now that I say that, I do remember I was 17 years old, not doing all that well, and someone exhorted me really harshly for, they felt I wasn't paying attention in church. And it was really direct. And I was hurt. And it made me angry. And like I said, I wasn't doing well. And I shared this story with people. And I remember every time I shared it, it brought up feelings. That's how it is. You know, as a more mature Christian now, I would know that I shouldn't be going around telling people about what this man did. But if you have been hurt by someone else, talk to someone who will help you overcome. And when you have overcome, it's in the past. Every one of us sins with our words sometimes. Every one of us has hurt with our words sometimes. Let's go on to the next verse here, the next slide. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and is set on fire by hell. The tongue is a fire. Is fire good? Is fire good? Well, in the fireplace, if you have a wood stove at home on a cold winter night, there's nothing, anyone who has that knows this already, there's nothing like a wood fire. We don't have one. I just listen to everybody else say it. You know, there's nothing like, sure there is. I have a gas fireplace. I just push the thermostat a little bit and I get fire as well. But there's nothing, and it's true, is fire good? There's nothing like that wood fire on a cold night. I expect that some of us here tonight will be at a campfire. Is fire good? Absolutely. Are campfires fun? Absolutely. It's a great way to socialize, to see the flicker of the flame as we spend time with other people we love. It's good for cooking. How about bringing out the wieners at about 10 p.m. and it's just fire is good. On a candlestick, fire is good. It gives light, ambience. Perhaps that candlelight dinner with your best friend, is it good? It does something. It's good. If you would ask someone in northern Alberta today, is fire good? The first thing they would say is no. The first, at least I think the thing that would come to their mind is no. Fire is devastating. Fire that is out of control. A spark that is outside the fireplace. You know, when you are sitting by your wood stove and a spark comes out and lands on the carpet, it has become bad. Same fire. And it has left its mark there, that ugly burn on the floor. Fire is good until it is out of its proper place. I heard on the news there was a Huron-Perth family who lost their home this week. Large family, 12 children, mom and dad, 14. All of them are safe. Is fire good? You see, total loss, devastation, destruction. So it is with our words. You and I can use our words, our tongue, to improve, to bless, to encourage, to give life. And you and I, we make the choice whether that's what we're going to do, or whether we will discourage, constantly exhort, hurt, abuse, destroy, ruin people. When we are reckless, when we are careless, or abusive with our words. They're just words. You know, I sometimes have said this in the classroom. Do you think your words can, have lasting effect on each other? They're not sure. Do you think that a word that you say today might be something someone remembers for the rest of their life? They don't think that. Do you think I could say something to you that you would remember for the rest of your life? They're very sure I could. Because, and then they realize, or some of them, that words can be used to destroy, to devastate, to hurt. because they don't just stick to us. Words go into us. And in the same way, I remember some things. I talked about my 7th, 8th grade teacher, some things that he said as he encouraged me to live well. And I rejected some of it. But those words stuck. They penetrated deeply. Yours are no different, guys. Your words are no different. Let's use them carefully. Verses 7 and 8, any animal can be tamed. They must have had marine land back then. It says here that that every reptile and sea creature can be tamed. James knew. Every beast and bird. You've seen it. I was talking to someone who was it recently? Was it someone here? They said they tamed a squirrel. Oh, no, it was a student. They tamed a squirrel, and I said, why would you want to do that is my first question. They said, well, there was this nest of squirrels, and the parent was killed, and so they raised them, and they had tame squirrels. That's just fantastic. The tongue, it says, though, is untamable. We can practice good discipline, but every one of us loses control of that at some point. Let's go back to verse 2. If anyone has perfect control of their tongue, they are a perfect person. This is a warning to us to consider carefully the effect of our words, because the tongue, our words are powerful, they are dangerous, and finally untamable. I'd like to go to the last few verses yet, because and here James is just saying it just doesn't make sense. With our tongue we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in his likeness. He's going back to chapter 2 where he says, if you treat one person differently than another, you are sinning. You've made yourself a judge. Who do you think you are? So with it we bless our God, and then we curse people who are made in his likeness. He says, from the same mouth come blessing and cursing. Dear friends, this is not to be so. Can a spring pour forth from the same opening fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, dear brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? And here's the thing. You guys know that James was not a follower of Jesus while Jesus lived, right? And he is matching the teachings of his stepbrother. His half-brother, I should say, not half-brother, sorry. This is what Jesus taught. Jesus said the same thing. Make a tree good, and its fruit will be good. Make a tree bad, and its fruit will be bad. For a tree is recognized by its fruit. Now, fruit is more than words. I get it. But your words are part of it. And here these are the words of Jesus, and he's talking to the religious people, by the way, when he says, you brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything good? For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. A good man brings out from the good that is stored in him, and an evil man brings out evil that is stored in him. You see, every one of us speaks what is inside of us. If you think critically, if you think judgmentally, if that is what you dwell on, it comes out in conversation. If we are gracious, if we think gently about others, if we speak grace or think graciously of others, that's what will come out. And Jesus said this, I tell you, everyone will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every empty word they've spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. In another place he said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Same thing. What is in your heart comes out. You see, I have a coffee here. If I'm walking along with my coffee and someone bumps into me and my coffee spills, someone might ask, why did you spill your coffee? Because you bumped into me. No. I spilled coffee because that's what was in my mug. If I had water in my mug, I would have spilled water. What is in us comes out of us. So when someone bumps into me, when someone wrongs me, when someone mistreats me, when someone says something about me, I will spill what has been my diet. I might spew, I might curse, I might swear, I might curse the person made in God's likeness and just say, well, they've always been an idiot, they've always been a jerk, whatever it is that comes out. Or if I have been having good water, if I've been drinking something that is pure and dwelling on that, that's what will come out. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. It says in Galatians, whatever we sow, we will reap. If we sow to our flesh, we will of the flesh reap corruption. If we sow to the Spirit, we will of the Spirit reap life everlasting. So what are you taking in to yourself? Jesus said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. He said, by your words you will be acquitted. By your words you will be condemned. Those are the words of Jesus. What are you putting into your heart? Above everything, the proverb writer wrote this in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 26, I think. 23 or 26. He said this, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. That's the NIV. King James Version says this, above all else, guard your heart, for it is a wellspring of life. You see, what we take into ourselves is what comes out in our words. How are you using your words? Are you using your words to encourage, to give life? Are you using them as a fire that brightens a room? I always say everybody brightens a room. Some upon entering, some upon leaving. What kind of person are you? What are your words doing? What are your words doing? Are they giving life? Or is it a fire that devastates, that destroys, that disheartens, that discourages? And dear friends, you know that the main tool of the devil, I'm convinced, is discouragement. When we are discouraged, it's hard to remain undefeated. And so let us consider, friends, let us consider carefully the weight of our words and the effect that they have on those around us, in our homes, with our children, in our workplace, with our peers, in our churches, with our youth, in our communities. May our words bless and give life to those around us. God bless you all as you continue to seek him and to pursue a life of faithfulness in the kingdom. God bless you.